Might be having more people coming in, but it's 8:02 now. So I think it's better for us to get started. So first of all, good evening, everyone. And to Dr. Esther, that will be good afternoon for her.
Yes, good
Right?
evening.
All right. So to begin, so thank you everyone for joining. So welcome to the third episode of this Scientist or That series number 3, season number 3. So we're in this series of talks now, AECC Global has collaborated with 6 universities from the UK to talk about courses and subjects that don't require you to be good in math. Okay, so we have participants from a few countries today, and I would like to know where you're from. So could you type in the chat box, quickly, the city that you're currently living in? Just have a quick type on the chat, just to see, where you're from. All right, I'm seeing some Singapore, KL, even some from Penang. All right, so we're seeing quite a few range of different people. I mean, different states. People from different places. So that's good. At least we have a wide geographical appearance today, right, from the audience. All right. So before we start the session, we need to know about what is AECC Global does, and also about AECC Global. So basically, we are a university placement agency that specializes in overseas education. So in order to know more about us, just follow us, or get in touch with us via our AECC social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or visit our website mainly for more information. Okay. So the links will be in the chat box, and they can check later on. So first off, today we have we're proudly we're proud to invite Dr. Esther Somogi from University of Portsmouth to talk to us about psychology, and then we have Mr. Jared Tong from University of Essex to talk to us about law. Right. So there will be 2 sections of this talk. So the 2 speakers will be answering some common questions, prepared by us, ACC. And then on the second part of it, we'll open up the Q&A to floor. So any questions that you have, you feel free to put in the Q&A box, and then we'll answer your questions towards the end of the session. All right. So don't be shy. Feel free to just ask anything you want, and then we'll pop with the question. Answer for you after that. All right. So without further ado, so let's start. All right. So firstly, I will go for psychology first. So I would like to ask Dr. Esther, would you like to introduce the psychology course that Portsmouth offer?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to see you and meet you all. So as I was saying, our department is quite international in itself. So I myself am from France and Hungary. And so at the department, we teach a number of courses in psychology, 2 undergraduate courses, one in psychology, general psychology, and another in forensic psychology. And psychology is the study or the science of the mind, trying to explain behavior, feelings, and thoughts. And at our department, we do a lot of research in these areas. So we're a very research active department, which ensures the quality of our 2 courses, undergrad courses to start with. And so one of the undergrad courses, as I was saying, is about general psychology, and the other is about forensic psychology, which applies what we know about the mind, thoughts, behaviors to the forensic or criminal law enforcement setting. So these are our topics in undergrad studies, and then we have a number of master's courses in other areas of psychology. For instance, health psychology is another area, which is the psychology of keeping healthy, or the psychology of living with a permanent condition like diabetes, or if you have any kind of permanent health condition, in what way can you achieve health with that condition? So these are the broader areas to start with, and I hope that introduces psychology to everyone, and I'll hand over to Jared, perhaps.
Yep, all right. I guess that's a good start for just a brief overview of what psychology is about, and then we'll delve deeper into psychology later on in the next few questions. All right, so now I'll pass the ball to Jared to introduce about the law course that University of Essex offers.
Okay, thank you, Manu, and thank you, AECC, for inviting us. Okay, so I hope you guys already had dinner, for the ones from Singapore and Malaysia. So University of Essex, one of the key selling points of our law school is that we're actually top 51 in the world by the Times Higher Education 2021 rankings. Okay, so the other key selling points that we have in the law school is that we have a law clinic and a human rights center available for clients that actually meet us, and then students can also get hands-on working experience and interacting with real-world clients as well. So you won't be seeing simulations or practice runs. So everything you do in the law clinic is basically applied, applied to your to work when you finish your studies in the UK, or when you come back to Malaysia as well. And our LLB law is also 3 years. Okay, of course, students can also opt for the placement year, or we call it sandwich year in the UK, which is additional 1 year. And students even can work in the placement, work for their placements in the law clinic as well. So this is some of the key selling points about our law degree at University of Essex.
All right. Yep, definitely the law clinic sounds very interesting. I believe we'll go through part of it again in the next few questions. So now back to Dr. Esther. So to go deeper a bit on the psychology, so I would like to know which subjects do students need to study psychology? And basically the $1 million question, also what our series is about, do they need math?
Yes, so maths is one subject that you can study to prepare for psychology, but there's a range of subjects that can be accepted when you apply. So this can range from languages, literature, through biology, physics. So a number of areas are suitable to prepare for psychology. Some of our students study a little bit of psychology in high school and use that grade when they apply. In general, I think you need English to study with us, but even students whose English needs a bit of polishing in terms of academic English can apply and join. And then if they find that they struggle a bit with the academic language, they can take part in tutorials, so special sessions, English sessions, to support you in your writing and learning. So a range of studies are great. Maths is a good addition, but if it's not your priority when you enter the course, you have a number of options where you can learn maths and enrich your knowledge, especially in terms of statistics. So we use statistics in our research to understand differences in behavior, like compare populations, compare groups. And in order to learn about statistics, you need to be familiar with the 4 operations in math. So addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication, but that's all. So beyond that, you will be taught everything on the course. Yeah,
right.
I hope
So
that
I'm
summarizes
saying,
it.
yeah, I guess as you're saying that, math is still important in a way, but at least you need to know basic math, I would say. And then if they need basic English brush up, they can brush up during the course. So there's no particular requirement, particular science or anything that you need to study, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Right.
All right. So now back to the law for Mr. Jarrett. So are there any entrance exam or any prerequisite subjects, for law school to get to LLB or something like that?
Yeah. So for our law school, we don't actually require students to have mathematics, but we do need to see some subjects. If you're studying, depending on what kind of pre-university qualifications you're studying. So if you're studying A-levels, we require to see some essay-based subjects or one essay-based subjects. So our entry requirement for A-levels is BBB. But if you have, let's say you study some subjects in A-levels like history, business, or law, or English, so these are called the essay-based subjects. So as long as you have one subject that is essay-based, we can accept you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, so and sorry, I forgot to mention. So a lot of UK universities, law schools in the UK, requires students to have LNET. So this the Law National Aptitude Test. So for our universities, we don't need students to do that, before they enter our law school. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess that's one advantage. I mean, because yeah, LNet is some required by some universities, and then it's not a prerequisite for Essex. So I think that's a good selling point in a sense. Okay. Okay. Now this one is a bit tricky. A bit tricky. I mean, it's a bit more elaborative because I would like Dr. Esther to share with us, like the study route of psychology. So is there like any additional exam or test student need to take in order to be a qualified psychologist after completion of the degree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are a number of areas where you can work with an undergrad degree in psychology. So after 3 years of study in psychology, you can already work as, for instance, as a marketing professional or assistant, or in HR. So there are a number of business areas, but also in other fields, like as a research assistant or as a clinical psychologist assistant. So you can already work in areas related to or within applied psychology with an undergrad degree. If you're looking for a psychologist title, so for instance, to become a chartered or registered clinical psychologist with the professional body of your country. So in the UK, this professional body is the British Psychological Society. So if you're looking to become a clinical psychologist, and this is sort of the other extreme of the spectrum, then you need to study, continue studying first. So after your undergrad degree, you would typically do a master's and then complete a doctorate degree. So it's a 3-stage process: undergrad, master's, and then doctorate, professional doctorate, we call it. Some people do a PhD, but in the end, they become a clinical psychologist. Or there are other psychologists that are registered with the BPS. For instance, sports psychology and health psychology are also areas where you can be a professional registered with the BPS. But between the two, so between having an undergrad degree in psychology and being a registered psychologist, there is a whole range of jobs and professions that you can engage with, from working in HR, marketing, all the way to working in hospitals and clinical settings. So typically, if you're working towards further degrees in psychology, especially towards a training to become clinical psychologist after your master's, they will require that you have some work experience. So it's good to look out for volunteering and job opportunities whilst you're studying, because that will be very much valued by employers and further education providers in the UK, but I'm thinking it's the same in other countries as well. And one more point I wanted to add is about jobs and placements, which also has a very huge importance on our degrees. So most of our students engage with some kind of placement during their undergrad studies. This can be a sandwich year, which is sort of the largest option, where you go away before you graduate, you go away for a year to work or study abroad. So that's the sandwich year option, to gain some work experience. But you can gain a little bit less, and those are the small and medium options, where you'd go for a placement for 40 hours during your second year, or during your last year, you can also go on a 180-hour placement, which is kind of a medium version. But we encourage our students to gain experience through one of these 3 options. You don't have to, so it's not mandatory. Some students just say, I want to gain work experience once I have my degree. I don't want to start working. I just want to focus on studying, and that's fine. But in the end, about 80% of our students end up engaging with some sort of placement. And since placement is one of our strengths, it's partly due to these placement and work opportunities that our courses have been ranked 27. So kind of it's a similar ranking, but for psychologists or departments and schools providing education in psychology. There's a ranking in the UK. There are about 150 departments and schools providing undergrad degrees, and out of those 150, our department is around the 27th at the moment. And that's a good place is because of our high ratings in terms of placements and job opportunities. So 95% of our students, once they graduate, are in further education or in a job 6 months after they got their degree, which is a good score.
Yep, there's a lot for them, for the audience to digest in. But I guess one thing to take note is, I mean, it's quite flexible in a way that, I mean, like whether how far they want to study psychology, whether towards masters or just a bachelor degree or towards the professional doctorate, you know. So I guess students, I mean, for students or audience today, I mean, you need to make sure, you know, if you're interested in psychology, to see which route that suits you the most in order to get started, I would say. Yeah. Okay. Now we go to law. So I understand that, I mean, most law students, you know, would need to do a lot of reading as part of the course, you know, and they take major exams such as the CLP or the BAR in the UK or other countries. So how is the study route generally to become a lawyer or for law program in general?
Okay, so it depends on first of all, when students are picking for their law degree, they make sure to have, make sure to check that the degree that they're applying for are accredited by the Bar Standards Board for the purpose of a qualifying law degree, so some of our degree is also recognized by the Solicitors Regulation Authority as well, for the purpose of satisfying the academic stage of training. So that's the most important thing. And then at the same time, let's say if our Malaysian students or our Malaysian audience are interested in coming back, to practice law when they finish their law degree, make sure the university's law degree are also recognized by the Malaysian BAR Council, which our University of Essex law degree is recognized by the Malaysian BAR Council. However, for students who are interested in studying law in Singapore and they want to practice law in, once they finish their studies in the UK, they want to come back to practice law in Singapore. Unfortunately, our law degree is not recognized by the BAR Council in Singapore. But you can actually check in their website to see which degree in the UK is actually recognized by the Singapore BAR. Okay, so for students who once they finish their degree, when they come back to Malaysia, Malaysian students, they will usually need to do the CLP, Certificate of Law Practices. Okay, so if students, let's say they don't want to do the CLP, they can actually do the bar practice training course or barrister training course. It actually supersedes CLP, so immediately they don't have to do the test after they finish their BPTC or BTC. Okay. However, to be eligible for the BPTC bar practice training course, the bar, you need to make sure that you follow the deadlines. For example, you need to register with the Inns of Court before your course start date, which is so all the course start dates in the UK starts in September or in October, which in our case, University of Essex starts in the first week of October. So you need to register for the Inns of Court before you start your BPTC. So the Inns of Court, basically, it's a the Inns of Court is basically like if you want to become a barrister in the UK or to receive the support while you're studying BPTC, you need to register with the Inns of Court, and there's like 4 Inns of Court. Okay, so then afterwards, then you will be able to start your BPTC. Okay, so at the same time, if you are doing BPTC in the UK, it's different than CLP. So CLP is just a test. Okay, while you are studying BPTC in the UK, you're actually you're not just getting you're not studying all the theoretical base in the knowledge of a law degree. So you also get practical training for to debate in courts and everything. So all these are there's the difference. So but in the end, it depends on your choice on whether you want to do the CLP when you come back to Malaysia, or you want to do the PPC, only come back to Malaysia to practice law. Some of our students even do the PPTC and become a lawyer in the UK as well. So a barrister in the UK. Yeah.
All right. So I guess so same thing to go to psychology, that you need to do a research where whether you want to go for CLP eventually or you want to take the BPTC, and then you just ensure all the deadlines and everything, all the ins and stuff. So make sure to do a research before you go for whichever routes, so at least you don't end up getting lost after completing the LLB. Okay. So now back to Dr. Esther. So I understand that for psychology there are like quite a few different majors or the specialization, I would say, like forensic, abnormal, child, social, industrial, organizational, etc. So what are common like specializations or that students are more likely to interested in or to study for?
Yeah, so actually there are 7 core areas that they learn about, or core areas registered by psychological associations, societies. These are sports, forensic, clinical, health, counseling, and educational psychology. But there are a number of other areas, applied areas that you can work in. And actually our students usually work in all of these areas. So the placements I was talking about would be so typically students would go work beside an educational psychologist in a school, for instance, supporting the children who have special needs in terms of education. That's one example. Other students go to some of the big corporations here in the Portsmouth area, like IBM, and there are some other big companies here where they can work as assistants in the marketing or HR areas. Some of these companies also provide graduate training, so which means that they employ you as a trainee before you graduate, and in exchange for staying on the job once you've graduated. So there are a number of options in business. Then other students go to clinical settings, hospitals, and volunteer there or work there, helping the patients, for instance, find their way around the hospital ward, or shadowing the clinical psychologist as they make a diagnosis. Again, others would go and work in a sports psychology setting. So, for instance, sailing is very popular here, as you can see on the image. And so we have, for instance, a number of sports actually in Portsmouth, number of sports clubs, but sailing and football are very popular. So you can, some students go and work with sports psychologists in these areas. And then a further big area, which I haven't mentioned, is forensic psychology. So we have a complete degree, an undergrad degree in forensic psychology, as I mentioned. So those students would typically go on placements and work, and later on get jobs in the field of working with law enforcement, or working, for instance, with juries, or doing research on interviewing techniques, or helping police officers, training police officers how to do a witness interview that is non-biased, how to get the most information out of a witness, for instance, somebody who saw a scene of crime but didn't think it was important. They didn't know they were seeing crime at that time, so they didn't think of remembering things later. How can you still do an interview with such witnesses in order to get useful information? So that's just an example for one of these applied areas. So our students, so those 80%, 85 who go on placements would typically work in these areas, and then later on they get jobs in these applied areas as well.
All right, that's good to know. I mean, there are a range of what areas that students are going for, and also getting involved in. So that's good. Just a reminder to all the attendees here. I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it out into the Q&A session so that we can answer. The speakers can answer after this. Now back to Mr. Jarrett. So I know there are different types of law, like areas, like criminal, tort, taxation, and many other areas. So are there any common majors that law students, may be interested in?
Yes, so definitely. So I mean, once you become a lawyer, there's like so many fields of law that you can actually specialize in. You can specialize in corporate and securities law, intellectual property law, criminal law, tort law. So all these are quite popular form of laws that are currently, in Malaysia, even in the UK as well. Besides that, students can even, do degrees or specializations in law, like criminology, law with finance, business law as well. All these are also very common in the UK as well as in Malaysia and Singapore as well. Yeah. So I think the most common and the most lucrative lawyers that I've seen is the students that are basically once they graduate, they actually work for corporate law. So anything that's related to contracts, mergers and acquisitions, all these are actually very lucrative as a lawyer. Yeah.
Yep, I see that. All right, so that will be one of the more common ones, the corporate law. All right, because just to add on to what you mentioned earlier, Dr. Esther, so let's say the student is only interested into the non-clinical psychology part, does he or she needs to understand, the clinical psychology knowledge or the skills as well?
Well, you would be introduced to all the areas during your undergrad degrees, but you don't need to specialize in that area if it's not something you would like to take up later. And in your last year, you can actually choose the subjects that you'd like to study. So in the first year, you get a general introduction of all the core areas. In the second year, you get to listen to speakers from all these applied fields. So a clinical psychologist comes in, a health psychologist comes in, a corporate psychologist comes in, so organizational psychologists, they come in and they talk to you about applied versions of those core areas. And then in your last year, you choose what you'd like to specialize in. So you choose option modules. So if one area is not that appealing to you, you can choose not to study that further. You do learn about it, because I think you can make an informed choice only if you've heard about all the areas. And some students say, oh, I never thought I'd like to become a clinical psychologist. I always wanted to work in education. But listening to this guest lecturer and the variety of things he does as a clinical psychologist, I'm now thinking of doing that. So it's good to be introduced to all the areas, but if you really know what you're after, you don't need to study in greater depth the areas that are not so much related to what you're interested in.
All right, that's good to know. At least they get to like exposure, different areas of psychology during the undergrad. And like you said, guest lecture in second year and all. I guess it's a good thing for students to explore their interest before they really choose to specialize in a particular area. So I think that's a very good thing.
Yeah, and I must add, sorry, that the BPS accredits our course. So just like in law, the BPS needs to accredit the courses that can later on lead to further study. And so the BPS also requires that accredited courses teach all the core areas at an introductory level. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a very good information. All right. So for law-wise, Mr. Jared, do students need to take further higher law education after going for BAR or CLP?
Usually it depends on the students. So usually for like our universities, we do offer LLM or masters in law, in international law, maritime law, corporate responsibility, international trade law, international humanitarian law, international human rights law, and many more as well. So these are the courses that students can actually study for their LLM. But at the same time, these LLM are also available for students who does not come from a law degree as well. So, and then they want to study something that is related to law. Okay, so this is also possible. But usually students, after they finish their BAR or their CLP, most of the time they would already focus on what specializations in law or the fields of law they actually wants to focus on, because the mentor or the law firms that they are working in, or getting their training, actually already focuses on specific laws in either in Malaysia and the UK as well. So and most of the time students can get knowledge or learn new knowledge that are on that specific law when they are working or training under that law firms and everything. Yeah, so the LLM is actually it depends on students whether they want to further their studies in the UK or further their studies for masters. And yeah, so if it's students just want to just learn another specific type of law or specialize in another field, they actually can just either work for another firm or study LLM. So there's these options.
All right, that's good to know. I mean, they have different options they can go for after getting LLB or getting the BAR or CLP. So good to take note. Okay, so this one is a bit interesting in the sense that because most students who study psychology, they would be, at least most of them will be very interested in hands-on projects, that they can do during the undergraduate course or even postgraduate courses. So are there many opportunities, where students, can conduct various experiments or surveys, within a control setting or even like outdoor setting with a different group of participants or different group of people?
Yes, so definitely. So as our department is very much research focused, we have 4 research centers. One of them is a greater international research center in forensic psychology, for instance. The others are focused on health psychology, another on evolutionary psychology, and the 4th one is focused on cultural psychology. But so students can engage with research at any levels. So research is one opportunity to get hands-on experience, either by working as a research assistant in your 2nd year already, with one of the researchers working on projects such as a recent project we just had with children at the Winchester Science Centre here in Hampshire, where we looked at how children interact with a robotic dog, eyeball, and we wanted to know whether robotic dogs provide more or less the same positive experience as a live dog that we also brought into the research, into the Science Museum. So children just came up to our little experimental area, and then they could freely play with 3 dogs actually, the robot, the live, and the puppy, and a plush toy actually. And then we recorded, of course the parents knew that they could be recorded, but we recorded the children's interactions, and then students could analyze differences in behavior with the 3 dog types. So that's an example for participating in research, but you can participate in research in any of the other fields that I just mentioned. Another way to get hands-on experience is to go on placements. So either choose the small, the medium, or the large, or all of these options, and try and get as much work experience as possible. And most of our students who wanted to gain work experience managed to do so, even in current times, doing online placements. So applying and then doing a version of that job online. So interacting with clients online or doing interviews online. So you do get a lot of opportunities for getting hands-on experience, either on the job with an organization. And I must add that these companies where students go on work placement are always checked by the university. So you can't just go to any company, but you can pick your own company if you've found one that you like, and ask the university to check whether they really provide the kind of service that is required for experience in psychology. If you want it to be recognized as a placement in psychology, it needs to be accredited by the department, but it's not a complicated process. And most of the job providers, placement providers in the area are actually already accredited and vetted by the university. And just to add on that note, that some of our students, international students, actually choose to go back to their home country for a sandwich year during their degree, which is also an interesting opportunity where you get some work experience. But if you know that after your degree you want to start your professional life in your home country, then it's good to go home for a sandwich year to gain work experience there, come back to Portsmouth, finish your degree, and then go back. So that's also an option. Some students use the sandwich year for that, actually.
All right. I mean, thank you for a good insight on how they can maximize, their ways of getting hands-on experience using different ways. So I guess that also applies to law, because like series, or like shows like Suits, Law and Order often show us like very interesting, court trials. So do students get to, the chance to experience that while studying, and how often do they get that experience?
Okay, so for students who are studying bachelor's in or LLB law, they rarely actually get experience those settings or scenarios that you see on televisions, especially if you are referring to Suits and Law and Order, because those are American shows. Okay, so but the UK law is actually very different. Okay, so if barrister actually goes to court and they actually have to wear robe, and some of them even have to wear wigs and everything. Yeah, so those are the settings and the scenarios for UK lawyers, barristers, or solicitors. Yeah. So and also in the UK they have lawyers who are called barrister or solicitors. So solicitors are usually what you call lawyer who doesn't I think often go to courts at all. Yeah. While barrister are mainly they will actually go to courts more often. So they will actually experience. That's why they call it the bar practice training course or the barrister training course. So because if students want to go to courts and they like to debates, case handling, all these things, they should actually become a barrister. Yeah, but it's not, so like for example, like I mentioned earlier, corporate and securities law, intellectual property laws, those are actually most of them actually called solicitors in the UK. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so just to be clear, students, everyone, which part you're going for, and then what you'll get, if you do LLB and also if you do postgraduate or the BPTC. All right. So now, we talk about the world today and the future, So what does psychology play, what kind of role does it play in this in this day and age and also the future, Dr. Esther?
So one example could be the role of psychology in the current pandemic. So health psychology has been a lot cited in these times to, for instance, look at how we can get people to adopt health promoting behaviors, and why is it difficult to convince people to adopt these in cultures where we never had to wear masks. At least generations grew up without having to use these health behaviors at all. So how can we convince people? How can we get people to use an app to register their location? How can we communicate about the pandemic? So communication psychology in a way that engages people. So I think health psychology was a lot cited in these times, and that's one example for the use of psychology. And then another example is mental health. That's been also cited a lot. So it seems that some of the symptoms that go either with lockdown or with infection, who knows, but there are some symptoms similar to depression, stress disorders that people can develop in these times. So studying these symptoms and looking at whether they are, for instance, just in response to what's happening and sort of normal response patterns to a stressful environment, or whether these are actually symptoms that might be caused by some kind of neurological disorder as a consequence of the virus, can be partly a psychologist or a neuropsychologist's role. So that's also something else that's being studied at this time. So those are some examples.
Yeah, that's good to know. There's so many different roles, psychology still plays, in this day and age, and also what upcoming roles they can play in the future. I guess there are really a lot more that can be explored. So how about, for Mr. Gerald, how about law? Are there going to be any new trends for law in the coming years?
Yeah, I think this is something that we already seen quite recently. I'm not sure in the UK, but in Malaysia as well. So like nowadays, you see a lot of data acts. So anything that is privacy, data and privacy is quite prominent in Malaysia. I think that's recently because of the what was that, Cambridge Analytica. So because of that, I think everyone is kind of very conscious about their own data on social media accounts and everything as well. So I think, even besides that, I heard there's like even a cybersecurity law that will be coming up, fake news, all these basically you will be seeing new trends as well. In the future, you might even see like you have data protection lawyers or cybersecurity lawyers as well, something of sorts. And then at the same time, even our universities is also doing research on whether is it viable to have artificial intelligence as judge as well, because judge they can be as AI if they are becoming a judge, they can be sort of like fair and non-prejudice as well. But at the same time, because they are artificial intelligence, they are void of any emotions that will be how do you say that will help in a case that is, if it's that's in the moral borderline or something like that. Yeah, so that's the trends that in law that you might be seeing in the future.
Yep, that's interesting. How we see quite a lot of IT inter-branches, with law, and how really it could be a big thing in the future because of all the data breaches, Yeah, and also how interesting the AI, if you really become a judge, how it turns out. Yeah. Yeah, it's very fun to know. Okay, I guess okay, Dr. you kind of answered this question, I would say, because besides being a psychologist, what else student can do with a psychology degree, and then basically it's the master's degree of must. So I guess you answered the part for the qualified psychologist, but let's say the students just want to do like a general psychology area, I know undergrad is okay, but is it okay? Is it a must for them to go for masters as well to be just a specialist in a particular general area?
Yes, definitely. So some of our master's students go on to work in other areas that are less related to psychology. That does happen as well. So depending on their interest, they might work in business, but not in one of the psychology related areas. Some of them go on to study for other degrees or add some other degrees, such as engineering, for instance. If they're interested in, for instance, developing software, there it's good to have knowledge about psychology as well as programming. So some would then complete the degree with something that takes them towards the area they're interested in. But psychology is a very versatile area that you can use in a range of professions. So you can specialize in psychology later on, but you can also just engage with another profession. So for instance, sometimes I talk to the librarians and I find that they did a degree in psychology before, but then they ended up working in a library. That's just one example, but yeah, you do get to work in different areas, and it's kind of up to you to sort of gain the work experience and apply for the kinds of jobs and steer your career a little bit towards what you're interested in on the long term.
All right. So I guess quickly go to Jared as well. Like, besides being a solicitor or barrister, are there any other areas that students can go with their law degree?
Yeah, definitely. So, the most common that you see students from law, law graduates, they actually work in law enforcement or even working for the governments and as a politicians as well. Then other non-common areas, like for example, human rights activists, social worker, some even go into finance after they finish their studies as well. So there's a students that have a law degree doesn't necessarily they need to become a lawyer. They can also study. They can go to work in other areas, in business, in government, in politics, even in law enforcement as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. There's also different areas they can go for after if they're not going for the normal law route. All right. Now this part, I just want to emphasize, for this part, I will get Dr. Esther to explain. At this stage, Singapore and Malaysia are allowed to study, or travel to study in UK. So are there any current UK travel regulations for this group of students?
Yes, so Adele will actually talk about this a little bit later about current restrictions, because they do change all the time. So she will have the most up-to-date information, if that's okay. And she will share those in the question and answer session, because I think one of the questions was about that anyway.
Okay. Yep. So I'll get her to share on that after this. Yep. Okay. While waiting, while we get to Adele later. So can you just update us, a quick one, on how about the user Essex in that sense, like on that part, and also are there like vaccination process or status for students? Are they required to be vaccinated to travel to UK to study? Something like any advice?
Yeah. So I think At the moment right now, our university is planning to have a face-to-face teaching in the October intake. Okay, so there, I mean, of course, there will still be blended learning, but mainly it will be face-to-face teachings. But you know, we'll still have some form of online studies either on campus. So let's just say if students, they feel like they do not want to travel, you know, they already applied, they got an offer, but you know, they feel like it's not safe to travel to the UK yet. Either it's because of their home country in Malaysia or in Singapore, and they want to study and start part of their courses online first. Yes, it is also possible because right now we have the flexible entry into the you know, for students to arrive on campus. In addition to that, students, you know, a lot of students are always asking us whether do they need vaccine before they travel to the UK. So the UK government or the UK immigration does not require students to have vaccinations, because at the same time, individuals at the age of 18 or above will start vaccinations in 18th of July. So this also applies to all our international students arriving on campus in October intake as well. So yeah, so basically, if you haven't have any vaccinations, it's fine. Or even if you have already, like let's just say Sinovac, you know, which is, you know, I think a lot of people have heard the news that any China vaccinations are not allowed into the Europe. It's not the case for UK. So if you have already vaccinations, they also allow students to enter into the UK for studies as well. If they don't have vaccinations, it's fine, and you can also get the vaccinations in the UK when you're studying. Yeah. So at the same time also, sorry, at the same time, Malaysia, I think Malaysia and Singapore is, I'm not sure about Singapore, but Malaysia is currently in the amber list. So when they arrive on campus, they just need to quarantine themselves for 10 days. And then after the 10 days, they can actually, you know, if they don't have any symptoms, they can actually just, you know, go to class face-to-face teaching already. And when they are quarantining in the accommodations at our university, they also don't have to pay extra accommodation fees. Okay, the 10 days quarantine will be free of charge.
All right, thank you, Jared. So let us quickly welcome Adele, so that she can answer this question as well. And do you have anything to add on, you know, to what Jared said, or is there any like a different process for University of Portsmouth?
Thanks, Manu.
Yep.
It's very similar to what Jared said. So it will be blended learning. This is what we strongly encourage, because the face-to-face experience is really much better than a purely online teaching and learning situation. I think Jared is saying that Malaysia is on the amber list, Singapore is on the green list. So there is no quarantine required, no self-isolation required. They just proceed as normal. Malaysian students will need to be self-isolating, as described by Jared earlier. I think a lot of universities would have put support systems in place. For Portsmouth, we have a 24/7 welfare team. Students can borrow laptops when they are in self-isolation, or if they have problems ordering food, we can deliver. The team will be on hand to help if there are any issues. Self-testing kits are available, home kits are available, testing site on campus is available. We encourage students to test, and staff to test twice a week. That process generally helps keep cases low, because if anybody tests positive, they just kind of stay at home and self-isolate for a while, and you know, everyone's safe. So the large lectures are generally no more, because if you can imagine, if originally we had 100 students in an undergraduate lecture, let's say, if you put social distancing into the picture, you can't fit the same number of people in the same room. At the most, you could fit maybe 20. So we decided to scrap that idea and actually record the lectures nowadays, so that students can watch them anytime. So you don't have to be in the UK, you could be in Malaysia or Singapore and watching it at a different time. And you can watch it over and over again. So that there is a benefit to that as well. So on top of that, the other side of the blended learning will be, yes, we would encourage students to attend tutorials, seminars, workshops, project meetings. In other courses that have lab sessions, psychology has lab sessions, or creative courses with studio sessions. These would all be practical sessions, hands-on sessions that are quite essential. And we would like to have students face-to-face for those classes. Yeah, I think that's how we're handling the pandemic right now.
All right. I mean, thank you very much, Adele, for a very comprehensive explanation, of how the class will be handled and then how's the process like for Malaysian and Singaporean students, to go over. So that is very, very good insight. I mean, I hope the audience, get to know better how's the process, going to UK to study at the moment, at least for the next intake. So without much delay, I mean, we'll just go to this Q&A because we have quite a number of questions here. So I'll just start with the first one. I guess it goes more towards, I mean, it's for both of you, but I guess more towards Jared, I guess, because he said, what course should I take if I want to do a course related to psychology and law, and what are the requirements for masters after law school?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think for our universities, I don't think we have a course that's related to both psychology and law. So most of the courses or programs that we have are law with business, law with politics, law with philosophy as well. But unfortunately, I don't think there's any law with psychology. I'm not sure about Portsmouth. Yeah. So for the requirements for masters after law school, our university accept second lower class or a CGPA of 3.0. Yeah. So these are the entry requirements that we accept for masters in our law school. Yeah.
All right. This one for Dr. Esther. This student would like to know what the master courses are available for psychology area in Portsmouth.
Yes, so we have two main master's courses, one in health and the other in forensic psychology. And forensic psychology is an area that merges law and psychology, because you do learn about law as you study. We also have a criminal justice center and a degree in law, which incorporates psychology as well. But at the department, what we deliver is essentially forensic psychology. So that's one of the masters. The other masters we have is about health psychology. So this is the area where you work with clients and patients around issues and behaviors linked to health or maintaining a good condition if you have a permanent health condition or disability. So health psychology and forensic psychology are the two master's areas we teach. All right.
There's another question for Dr. Esther as well. This one is curious on what does a psychology do in the sports club? In general.
Yeah, I think with the Tokyo Olympics coming up and with the football championships, there's a lot of talk about how psychologists can help athletes, high-performing athletes, to get the best out of their performance on a day. So there are teams of psychologists working with these athletes, working on, for instance, techniques to imagine the movement, the action that you're going to perform, techniques to relieve stress. So sometimes you see these strange behaviors that athletes do before they, like tennis is a good example, but also swimmers do all sorts of superstitious movements, but that's not because they're superstitious. It's because probably they worked with their psychologists on a routine that helps them to clear their mind and focus on the action before an important sports event. So that's a good example for what a sports psychologist would do.
All right. I guess this one is just a quick question for you as well, Dr. Esther. Is University of Portsmouth a research uni? I guess you kind of stress on that. Yeah, I mean, anything to add on to that? Just a quick one.
What was the? I didn't.
Is University of Portsmouth a research uni?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
So the department is very much focused on research. So if you look up our web pages, Department of Psychology, Portsmouth, you will find the 4 research centers and the topics and the publications that staff members write well all the time. So we have a number of publications in international journals that you can look up to see more about the kind of research we do.
All right. This question can go to both Jared and Dr. Esther, but I guess I get Jared to answer first. A quick one, like if a student studying business degree now, can he or she study psychology or law in the masters in the future?
Yes.
Master's level, yeah, correct.
Yeah. So we do allow, like I mentioned in the beginning as well. So our entry requirement for our LLM or Masters in Law allows students to come from any background. So you can study a business degree, you can study a psychology degree, you can study even a design degree as well. So these masters do allow students to come from any backgrounds. Yeah.
And does that apply to psychology, Dr. Esther?
For most masters in psychology courses, you do need to have an undergrad in psychology or an equivalent, but most often it will be an undergrad degree in one area of psychology. It can be forensic psychology even if you want to study health, but it has to be some kind of psychology degree in order to progress towards masters because of the professional bodies regulations. So for any masters that's accredited by our professional body, you need to have an undergrad degree in an area of psychology. So with international students, if we are not sure, then we would check with the BPS whether their undergrad degree would count as equivalent. And students can actually apply for the masters and figure out during their first teaching block or ask for this equivalence to be judged or valued or issued by the BPS. Now, if a student doesn't manage to have their undergrad recognized as an undergrad in psychology, they can still do the course. It's just that they won't get the accredited version of the course, which in the UK might be an issue if you want to use your master's in the UK. And that the version and that you did and if you did the masters without it being accredited, that could be an issue if you wanted to work as a psychologist in the UK. However, other countries most often recognize the masters regardless, or you would need to check with your own country's rules and regs whether your master's is still. So you can still do the course. It's just that you wouldn't get the accredited version of the diploma at the end if your undergrad wasn't in psychology.
All right.
I could add a couple of things there, if it's okay. For Malaysian students who are interested in Masters in Psychology programs, I normally recommend that you write to the BPS before you apply to a UK university with an accredited course. A good number of our students have done this in the past. It doesn't take that long. You pay a membership fee to the BPS for them to assess your previous syllabus. So if you studied at a public or a private institution in your home country, you can send that syllabus over to BPS for them to check it out. If they're happy with it and you have basically all the main components of psychology in it, they'll be happy to recognize you as a graduate member. And that's what the fee you pay is actually for. So you pay an annual fee. It's not much. And you'll get to be a member of the BPS. And with that, they'll send you a certificate, and you can then put that certificate in with your application to the masters. So it's a more straightforward way. That way, at least you know then whether you're actually recognized with your earlier undergraduate degree.
Okay, this next one is a bit complicated, I would say, but I think it's mostly for Dr. Esther or Adele. Like this, I ask, do I need to have credit in my science subject for SPM in order to study Masters in Forensic Psychology after law degree? Yeah.
I think this goes back to the previous question, because if you're doing a Master's in Psychology, regardless of whether it's health psychology or forensic psychology or even general psychology, you'll still need some components of psychology in your previous degree. So if your law degree has some components of psychology in it, it may be possible. But if it doesn't, I mean, if it's a pure law degree, then it doesn't really matter. Your SPM wouldn't come into the picture because it's a little bit far back for us to look. We look at the more recent qualification that you have, and that would be your bachelor degree. So
however, you can do a foundation course actually. If it turns out that your degree cannot be recognized as a degree in psychology, you can do a foundation course. Many universities offer, and we will also offer from 2023 for any students who don't have an undergrad in psychology, a foundation year to prepare for a master's in psychology.
Is that a pre-master's, Esther? Are you referring to master's?
Yeah, it's the same term. But
yeah. So it's like a pathway program that helps to convert your previous study that's not related to psychology, and you could possibly then take that before the actual master's course.
Yeah.
All right. That's a pretty clear answer how to get about that. Okay, this one is for Mr. Jarrett. So this student is completing first year undergraduate law degree online studies under the Australian uni. So is it possible for the student to credit transfer to uni as Essex for LLB second year?
Yes, there is a possibility, but of course, any credit transfer to our universities or any UK universities in the UK requires, basically it will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So you need to send us your transcripts, your full transcripts, and any subjects that you're taking for, the rest of your first year. If you still haven't got your final results yet, then you send it to us so that we can do the assessments and see whether is it eligible for you to enter into our second year. Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's good. Okay, this is also for Jared. Are there any like free airport pickup service at University of Essex?
At the moment, right now, our airport pickup service have not announced for the dates yet, but unfortunately, it's not free. So your students need to pay at least £45 to to take our airport transfer or to our universities from the Heathrow Airport. Yeah.
All right. I guess Mr. Jared did mention something about quarantine fees earlier, so I'll get this to Dr. Esther or Adele to answer if the student need to pay any quarantine fees in UK.
So quarantine, in the strict understanding of quarantine, is only required for students from red light, on the traffic light list, those under the red list. And in all of Southeast Asia, I think it's only the Philippines at the moment. So Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, I think at this time are not on that list. So you don't actually need to be quarantined as such, because quarantine students, when they arrive in London, they have to go stay in a hotel that's been assigned by the government. They have no choice. They can't choose the hotel. They're just sent there, and they have to pay the fees when they apply for their visa. But if you are self-isolating in your own campus housing or your private housing, then there is no quarantine self-isolation fee. You're just paying for your accommodation, your standard accommodation.
All right, that's good to know. One more question for Mr. Jarrett. This student asked, does he or she has to go through STPM if he or she is not going for A-levels in order to go for LLB?
We actually accept a whole varieties of pre-university qualifications. So if students doesn't want to do A-levels and you don't want to do STPM, you can actually do foundation, diploma, Australian matriculation, Canadian pre-U, even Malaysia's matriculasi as well. We do accept a whole variety of qualifications, pre-university qualifications in Malaysia. But if you want to know, if you haven't decided or you want to know which qualifications would be suitable for you, you can always check with AECC, or I can also let you know all the entry requirements for these qualifications that I have just mentioned as well.
All right. So now we're down to the last question. Just a quick one. I guess both Mr. Jarrett, Dr. Esther, or Adele can share how's the experience of the Malaysian community in UK, in maybe Essex or Portsmouth or in general?
I think I can share first. So in Essex, we actually do have Malaysian society, and it's actually one of the largest society on campus. So basically any Malaysians who join us from Malaysia, they will actually join the society. And every year our Malaysian society will organize festival events or cultural events as well. Like for example, Hari Raya, Chinese New Year, Deepavali, even like Pasar Malam or night market in the UK as well. I mean in our campus, yeah.
Anything to add on, Dr. Esther or Adele?
That's cute. I like that Pasar Malam idea. Our Malaysian students don't do that, but they do go online and start selling nasi lemak. So Yes, there is an active Malaysian society. Although I should say not all the Malaysians on campus join the society. Because there are just so many different societies available. They can choose anything. More than 150 different clubs and societies. Any sport you can think of is probably there. And we have Malaysians joining Korean society and Japanese society and other societies as well. So they get very involved in all of this and other things as well. So other than just the Malaysian society, we organize excursions. Every term, students can go visit like Stonehenge or go see the palace or go to London to watch a musical. Some go to Europe. So it depends on what the student union organizes every term. We have student ambassadors that we hire and engage to get involved with some university work. So if they want to earn some pocket money, they can work with the university. Or if they don't want to, they can just go out into the broader city and look for a part-time job as well. I know we have Malaysian students who do anything from working in admin jobs in a hospital to serving ice cream to making pizzas, all sorts of things they've done. And they all seem to enjoy it. So it's quite lively, and Malaysians are not bored on campus, that's for sure.
All right, that's good to know. How is it in Essex and so in Portsmouth? How's the society like, and how is the community like as well? So I mean, that comes to the end of all our Q&A session. I mean, thank you very much for attendees for the questions. So to wrap it up, I mean, I want to say that even though it's quite common to know that psychology and law don't have much to do with maths, probably more a bit towards the psychology, but it's still anyhow maths is still everywhere in our life, whether you hate it or love it. I mean, you still need to know this exists in our life. So basically, you will just get to where you want to be someday. I mean, you should share what you want to do. So keep striving for it. And just a closing note, I mean, do you, Dr. Esther or Mr. Jared, have anything to share? I'll go with Dr. Esther first.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining and bearing with us today. It was great to see you and answer the questions you have. And I wish good luck to everyone in achieving your career goals on the long run.
All right. And how about Mr. Jared?
Just thank you everyone for listening to us talking today. So if you guys have any more questions, you can always just approach AECC or approach Dr. Esther or Adele or me to ask more questions about psychology or law or even other courses as well. And take care and stay safe.
Okay, I mean, since you're here, Ms. Adele, Eileen, can you have a quick closing note as well?
It's just good to be here and to be able to talk to all of you who've taken the time to listen. I wish you all the best in your studies. Yeah, and as Jared said, if you have any questions, just reach out. We're always here, happy to help you on your journey.
All right, so thank you, all three of you. So here comes to the end of our Study This and That season 3. So that's the end of our series. So I hope this whole series has provided you with useful insights, that will help you in your study journey, throughout the journey as well. So if you have any questions regarding the study in the UK, as well, all our three panelists, as I mentioned, please feel free to contact us and also us AECC. So you may scan the QR code or contact us through any of the following channels. And then we also have left all the links, on the chat box, so you can click on those. And make sure to follow us, on our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube for any latest study abroad activities and also updates. And so once again, I want to thank our sincere thank you to Dr. Esther and Mr. Jared, and also Ms. Adele from helping out towards the end. So, and also to everyone who have joined us for this late evening. So we love having all of you tonight and hope to see you everyone again soon. All right.